Dear students, again continuing with our selective topics on stock exchanges, stock market, we'll be covering underwriting and IPO process in today's lecture. So what is underwriting? So underwriting, we are talking about stock market. So specific to stock market, underwriting is an act of guarantee by an organization which is called the underwriter for the sale of certain minimum number of shares and debentures issued by a public limited company. So basically they will guarantee that so many shares at any cost will be sold in the market. If nobody is buying, they will be there to buy. So they will ensure that is sold. So underwriting is done, the service is offered for a commission. And underwriters for IPO, they are people who work closely with the issuing company and they help them through the IPO process. So they also buy shares and sell it to investors through their own network. So besides underwriters for IPO, underwriters are also found in other industries like mortgage industry, insurance industry, and so on. So they play a very important role in the finance industry. We have two kinds of underwriters. One is institutional. So the major banks and financial institutions like LIC, ICICI, IDBI, they are all institutional underwriters, and we have non-institutional underwriters who are also called brokers. They are generally high net worth individuals who are very rich and who support new ventures and all. Okay. As far as IPO is concerned, what kind of underwriting arrangements can be entered into? So following are some of the arrangements. First is a firm commitment. So under this, the underwriter purchases the whole offer. I mean, whatever shares the company wants to sell at whatever price to raise capital, everything is purchased by underwriter, and then he takes up the responsibility of reselling that to the investing public. Okay, so they give a guarantee of the amount of capital to be raised. Okay, then comes the best efforts agreement. So in this, the underwriter offers his services and takes the best effort to support the company, but they don't give any guarantee for XYZ amount of capital to be raised or something to the issuing company. Okay. The next category is all or none agreement. In this, what happens is the underwriter takes the best effort to raise capital in the market, but if all shares are not sold, the offering is completely cancelled. Of course, they get their own commission. That is different. And then finally, we have something called a syndicate of underwriters. So in this, what happens is the offerings, public offering or IPO can be either managed by one single underwriter or multiple underwriters. So when there are multiple underwriters involved, that becomes a syndicate of underwriters. Usually, when there are so many different parties involved who form the syndicate, there is one person who will lead, and he is called the lead manager. Okay. Now, why are underwriters important? What role do they play? So quickly, as already discussed, they not only underwrite the securities but also subscribe that part of shares which remain unsubscribed by the public. Next is the reputation of underwriters adds to investors' confidence. The underwriters, who are called lead managers, provide financial recognition to even new companies. So when people see this, people or investors see that such big firms are associated with certain companies who are issuing shares, they feel little more confident. Okay. Large issues can be undertaken with the help of underwriters because they are professional organizations who focus on IPOs. Okay, please remember, students, no company will go for IPO all by themselves. Usually, it's a standard practice to appoint underwriters or professionals who help them carry out the process. And then companies with long gestation period, especially the steel or manufacturing companies, have raised good amount of capital through underwriting. Okay, and technocrats, in Bangalore there are so many people who are into software, who are so technically oriented. They might not have very good grip on finance. So for such people also, underwriters give them support. And new projects in remote areas, in priority sector areas, can be undertaken with the help of underwriters. So these are some support that we get from underwriters. Having said this, let's move on to the next topic, that is IPO process. So this is a very important process. This is also called the initial public offering process. And this means IPO process is where a previously unlisted company sells new or existing securities and offers them to the public for the first time. So after an IPO, the issuing company becomes a publicly listed company on a recognized stock exchange, and an IPO is also known as going public. So what are the steps in IPO? The first and foremost is appointing an underwriter or an investment banker, selecting an investment banker. The first thing the company must do is to select an investment banker or multiple banks who will form a syndicate. And the company must be ready with detailed financial records for intensive fiscal health scrutiny that SEBI would perform. So once they have decided to go public, they have to be ready with all the possible information. Okay, so the next step is, with the help of the underwriters, the company has to submit something called a registration statement along with the draft prospectus to SEBI. So the underwriters also help in preparing this, and it's a statement of company's fiscal health and future business plans. SEBI scrutinizes this report and does its own background check of the company. So it takes some time to do all this, and the company also must ensure that all the other formalities, registration statement, and all the mandatory requirements are all satisfied. So once this is submitted, registration statement is submitted to SEBI. Parallelly, the company also applies for listing with exchanges along with these documents, mainly the draft prospectus. Now, the company will be receiving inputs both from SEBI and stock exchange. Okay, but while this is getting scrutinized, parallelly, the company works on something called the red herring prospectus. So with the assistance of underwriters, they create the preliminary red herring prospectus, which includes again all the details of the financial records, future plans, and details about expected share price range. So it doesn't specify the share price, it gives the range at which they plan to sell the shares. And this prospectus is meant for prospective investors who would be interested in buying the stock. But there is a legal warning here stating that IPO is pending SEBI approval. Okay. So during this waiting time, after the red herring prospectus is prepared, the next step is advertising or roadshow. So in this, once the prospectus is ready, red herring prospectus is ready, the underwriters and company officials go on a countrywide roadshow, visiting major trading hubs and also to promote the company's IPO, especially among few select private buyers. So they will talk to them about the company, give them the prospectus, and do a general advertising about the company and also the business plans. So they also give detailed information regarding the growth potential as well, and with the feedback from these private buyers or investors, with their response, they also get a feel of how the IPO is likely to succeed. Okay, and even on the pricing they get inputs. Okay, then post this, once this is happened, SEBI will review, and once SEBI is satisfied with the registration statement, it declares the statement to be effective and gives a go ahead. Okay, so if SEBI gives any comments on the prospectus, that has to be incorporated. Likewise, even stock exchange might have few inputs, so even that has to be incorporated, and all these will require approval from SEBI before it is given to the public. Okay. So after this stage, an effective date or the date for IPO is decided, and once the date is fixed, the next step is deciding on the price band and share numbers. So the road show and all the advertising that they have done, they get a good idea about what pricing would best work out, and how many shares should accordingly be sold in the market. So based on this, the company decides on the price band of shares and also decides the number of shares to be sold. So students, here you note, the company might still go with the price band, okay, and based on how investors actually respond during the IPO, they can fix a price at a later stage. So in an IPO, what happens? Shares are not sold immediately. Subscriptions are invited from investors. So investors will actually give in writing about the number of shares they would like to purchase and at what price within the band. So based on that, based on the demand that they see, they can fix up a share price. This process is called book building process. So that is one method of fixing price. Or at times the company can also go for fixed price IPO, where they will directly decide to issue 10 lakh shares of each face value rupees 10, and they will say we are selling it at rupees 50 or rupees 55. So that is fixed price IPO. But the usual method followed these days is book building, where the price band is given and based on the demand position the final price is fixed. Okay, so once the pricing is done, the next final step is make it available. The actual IPO process, make it available to public for purchase. So on the dates mentioned in the prospectus, the shares are available to public. Usually the window is 4 to 5 days. Investors can fill the IPO form and specify the price at which they are willing to make the purchase. Then what happens once this is closed? The next step is issue price determination and share allotment. So based on all the inputs that they have received, the underwriters and the issuing company, they will all meet, sit together and determine the price at which the shares will be allotted. So now they will fix up the price. The price would be directly determined by demand and the bid price quoted by investors now. So once the price is finalized, shares are allotted to investors based on the bid amounts and the shares available. Okay. So in case there are shares are oversubscribed, that means too many forms have come in, but they don't have enough number of shares. Many a times, the money is also returned back to people for whom allotment has not been made. So the last step is listing and unblocking of funds. So this includes that the company is now listed in a stock exchange, that is in the secondary market, once the IPO is done, for further trade. So investors start trading in secondary market, and also people for whom allotment has not been made, even for them money has to be refunded. People who have applied, who had subscribed but for no allocation, refund is given. So this is an overview on the IPO process. We'll take up a few more topics in the next lecture. Thank you so much.